Hello, my name is Meera Bhatt, and I'm a junior at Montgomery High School in New Jersey. Welcome back to the interview series on colleges and careers, where I talk to established professionals from a wide range of careers to learn and gain a well-rounded understanding about different careers and different pathways to success. Today, I'm so excited to be speaking to Miss Stefanie Lachenauer, a middle school teacher in Montgomery Township and one of my favorite teachers that I've ever had. She has taught social studies, language arts, active citizenship, and is currently teaching two courses that she helped develop with a social justice lens, global leadership, and character, college, and career readiness. Ms. Lachenauer has 8 years of experience incorporating mindfulness into the classroom to professional development for schools, parents and caregivers, community groups, and nonprofits. Currently, she is completing her trauma-informed practitioner certification to support the compassionate care team that she co-leads to support the UMS school community. Her career in education and mindfulness centers around the wish to empower all of her students to love themselves just as they are and go out and create the world they wish to live in. Her greatest joy is supporting students as they start nonprofits and other positive change in the world, such as Healthy Mind, Healthy Body Initiative and Monty's Got Talent for a Cause. Welcome, Ms. Lachenauer. Can't wait to speak to you about your journey. All right. Hello, Ms. Lachenauer.
Hi, how are you, Meera?
Good, thanks. So I want to start by asking you, how did you get into education as a career? Did you always know what you wanted to do, or how did that happen?
Great question. So for me, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. Like since I was little, it was one of those things that just felt really innate to me. Like I used to make my poor little sisters play school in the summer. Like I wouldn't let them go outside until like they finished their homework. I loved like sharing knowledge and working together and helping them to learn new things and watching those aha moments. So it was something that I knew even as a small kid.
Okay, well, I guess that makes it easy to some degree. So what education is needed to do what you do? Like, are there direct programs to become a teacher? Do you need a master's degree? Do you need a doctorate? And what did you do, and do you recommend that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to become a teacher. There's also alternate routes. So
Mhm,
many people decide that they want to go into education later on. And so
mhm,
that's a whole other, I don't even know how to do that, but I know that there are plenty of different routes and ways to do it. But I can speak on
right.
how I did it. So
Yep.
because I knew that I wanted to be a teacher, when I was looking at schools, that's what I was looking for.
Mhm,
And I knew that I was likely going to want to stay in New Jersey after school. So I wanted to be in a school in New Jersey, and I knew I wanted to get a master's, which you don't have to be a teacher in New Jersey, but I knew that that was something I wanted. So I was looking at schools for that. And I chose Rutgers because they have a 5-year master program. So you get your BA in the 4 years, and then the following year you finish up your master's. So you start
mhm.
your master's work in your senior year. And I have to say, I loved the program. I loved everything about it. There was a really strong focus on social justice, and that was really important to me because I'm all about empowering students to be who they are, to love themselves, create change in the world. And so I really liked the education that I received there, and I felt like I was really prepared. You know, we had plenty of times to go in for observations, and then our student teaching actually started in September. So many student teaching programs start in the spring,
Mhm.
but when you start in September, you get to see what the school year starts like. And as a
Right.
teacher, those first few weeks are really, I think, the most important because you're really building that foundation and that relationship. And you can't learn if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel comfortable. And so that those first few weeks are the most important.
Okay, well, that's really interesting to hear. I know Rutgers has like a really great program for teaching, as well as some other New Jersey schools. We're really lucky to be in a state that has, some great schools for teaching.
Yes.
Um, so as for your day-to-day now as a teacher, what does a typical day look like for you? What I know you teach two classes now, global leadership and then the college and career readiness class. But what do you have to do to prepare, and what does a usual day look like?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So for both those classes, I've helped write the curriculum. So that was really helpful because I created it, so I know it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to do a lot of the curriculum work over the summer. So
Okay.
that's really helpful. So I know people are like, oh, teachers have the summers off. Like, yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
It depends. You can have the summers off, but I find it really helpful when we do curriculum work in the summer because it helps you to really lay that groundwork and then you know kind of what's coming. So
Right.
the summer is really about let's get this together. Like, let's lay out where everything is going, and sometimes changing the curriculum or improving it. So a day-to-day looks like the curriculum is already kind of established. Most of the lessons are outlined, maybe not completely done. For me, I like to get to school early because I just like those few moments of settling in, making sure that I'm ready, that I'm in a clear, calm place. I'm also a mindfulness teacher, so I need those moments for me because I know that the more grounded and center I am, the more present I can be for my students, and the better of a class that we'll have, and the more available I am to my students.
Right.
And then my schedule is that I don't teach the first block, so I have that time for planning. So in Montgomery, we're really, really lucky. We have about an hour of planning time that we get to do. So it's either meeting with guidance counselors to talk about different students and how we can support them, planning time with our co-teachers so that we can plan actual curriculum stuff, and then also planning with our PLC, a professional learning community. And so that can be talking about all different kinds of things, like what kind of assessments are you using, or what types of questioning are you using in your classroom, and how is that working or not working? So we're constantly learning and growing together in our school, which is awesome. And then I teach the rest of the day. So we teach 3 blocks. I teach 3 blocks on an A day and 2 blocks on a B day. And so, I mean, we know kind of what that looks like, but so prepping ahead of time is just kind of getting the classroom ready and making sure that my lessons are done and copies are ready during my prep time, and then being fully engaged during that class period. So I find that the more prepared you are ahead of time, the better the class goes, because when you're not thinking about what you have to do, like you already know what you're going to do, you're able to really be there with the kids. And that's where the magic happens, right? Is in that relationship, in that conversation, in that dialogue.
Right. Well, it's so interesting to hear about how like you have to do all this stuff behind the scenes. I know it's often overlooked. But okay, that's really nice to hear. So thank you. So as for a little bit more of like the skills and personality type, what do you think people need in terms of skills and personality type to have to be a teacher or work in education, even though there's so many different sectors you can be in education? I guess you can talk from your experience as a teacher. What do you think are certain skills or personality type or types of people that are suited for this profession?
I think being present is really important so that you can really build that relationship. So people who are compassionate, who have patience, because anything can happen, right? So being ready to be flexible, because you can plan a lesson however you want, but that doesn't mean that it's going to go exactly how you have it in your head, because you have a classroom full of other humans, and other things can happen. Other questions come up, or a lesson takes a new turn. So being able to be able to improvise, right? So to be able to follow where your students and what they're interested in, and to be really open to that. Yeah, I think that's super important. Of course, there's the things you normally think about as a teacher, like being organized and that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's important too. But I think being able to be really present and really able to connect with your students and hear where they're going and what they're interested in, and to follow that to better support them.
That sounds like a lot of what, all the qualities that my favorite teachers have. So, yep, that sounds about right. So what do you like and not like about working in this job as a teacher?
So my favorite thing is my students. To me, that's my favorite, is building those relationships and watching them grow throughout the year. And then when they come back and do amazing things and hearing about it, even when they're not students in my classroom, like seeing the things that you're doing, Meera, that's one of my favorite things. That brings me the greatest amount of joy.
Thank you.
That's one of my favorite things. And also for me, working in Montgomery has been amazing. I feel super fortunate that I get to work with professionals. So people who can meet me and then also help me to grow, right? So we meet each other, but then we help each other to grow. So I'm constantly learning and being challenged and trying new things. So it never feels stagnant. Even though I've been teaching for 15 years, it's always different, and it's always changing. Things I don't like, I think, are things that most people don't like in any jobs, like the paperwork stuff, like things that you have to like fill out certain forms. Like that's not incredibly inspiring or exciting, but those just aren't my favorite things.
Okay. Well, I guess the fun part or the part that you liked is really exciting. It's good that I guess that you keep having new things every year so that it's not like you're getting bored of this job, which I feel like in certain professions it's like the same thing over and over again. But I think that uh, attractiveness of teaching and education is like how things are constantly evolving and how you kind of have to evolve with them as well.
Yeah.
So what are your interests and in what way does this job satisfy those? So I know you mentioned about mindfulness and about social justice, and those are things that you constantly are working towards. So could you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my interests have always been in social justice and in mindfulness and really empowering kids, in particular middle schoolers, to really know who they are and to love themselves for who they are, but then also to know who they are, and then those things that they're interested in, go out and create that change in the world, go out and do that thing, like shine in the brightest way that they can shine. And so teaching really lets you do that. And
Mhm.
also really cool about being a teacher is that you have other avenues that you can use. So like we have that time to have after school clubs. So we have like a yoga club, we have mindfulness for our Achieve program that I get to help with, which is awesome. Um, there's also our global leadership class that we do a lot of really cool things in. And then we have things like Monty's Got Talent for a Cause, which is awesome. So our whole school community can be involved in things. So I think being a teacher, you have this great um, way to reach out within the community. So you have your own classroom, but then you also have this whole community that you get to work with, the school community and then the greater community that you're in. So I feel really fortunate that those things that I'm most passionate about, I really have that avenue, that place to be able to help share that with kids and hopefully get them excited about it as well. And then things like our global leadership summits and service learning trips. So I find that to be, that's one of the other things that's really exciting about being a teacher, is that I'm able to share those things with other students.
Mhm. Well, that's awesome that, you know, your interests align perfectly with what you do, or if not, you try to like create those opportunities because I know that a lot of the like the two classes that you teach now, like you co-wrote the curriculum, which so that's just exciting that you know constantly are doing these things that align with your interests and like morals kind of. So the next part is kind of like advice so like for people who are interested in education or possibly thinking about it as a career, someone like me, what advice would you offer them who are entering this profession? And what do you think that are some things they should keep in mind?
Mm. So knowing what your passions are and
Mhm.
what your philosophy is in teaching. So kind of figuring that out, like why is it that you want to be a teacher, and what, because often we think about what kind of impact we want to have, or we want to
Mhm.
impact students. So what does that really mean to you? And then kind of being really clear with that. And I actually would recommend that for any profession that you're going in, being really
Right.
clear about who you are, what's important to you, what your values are. Um, and because as a teacher, you kind of need to know what that is. Like in many places, you need to be able to be neutral too. So really checking in with who you are and what you're about, and why you want to do what you want to do, and then seeing like how you can best serve your students. And the other part is that also this goes to almost any career. In whatever career you want to be in, knowing again what you care most about, because maybe what you want to do doesn't exactly exist right now. So
Mhm.
you get to create that, or maybe you have something else that you do with it, or you find like a little niche, right?
Mhm.
So following those interests, like if it inspires you, then that's a yes, figure that out, do it. It doesn't have to have already existed. It doesn't have to be something that people are already doing. Like you can make things happen that haven't happened yet, or you can combine things, right? Like just because most teachers only do this doesn't mean you can't be the teacher who does this and this and this, or who helps students to do this. So if you're passionate, share that passion in whatever way feels right to you.
Wow, it's really valuable. I never thought about that before on how like you should really have your intentions clear on why you're doing something because I think that it would just honestly make your life like really easy because you're like, I'm doing this for this reason. Never thought about it that way. So what is the scope of this profession and the status of this industry for the future? I know that the pandemic kind of switched all of our views on education with us having to work and do school from home. But I think that teachers will, always have a need. But what is the status of the industry? Are teachers always going to be needed in the same capacity they are now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that that's a question that a lot of us are considering right now.
Uh-huh.
What does education look like? We saw that we could still have school going on, maybe not in the best way because it was like emergency, like just figure it out real quick. But school can be online, and it's existed online before, but now we know that we can make that work. And so I know that there are more and more opportunities for using education in that kind of capacity. So there's Zoom schools now more than ever. Like some of them have existed and now they've expanded. So and then even considering, what does a snow day look like? Do we have off a full day, or does that mean that we can have school online? And so I think we're going to start to see more and more of a hybrid situation like that. But as far as teachers, I think teachers are always going to be needed. I just think what that looks like might start to be a little bit different.
Right. Well, that makes sense. And I think that, like you said, it's something that a lot of people are still thinking about, and even like students, like how will school look like in the fall? We don't really know. But okay, so if you had to go through the college admissions and career process all over again, would you do anything differently, or would you choose the same path for yourself? I know you said that you knew you wanted to be a teacher from when you were little, but as for like in college admissions and choosing kind of where you went with that, would you do anything differently?
I'm not really sure. Like it's hard. Like I know people are always like, oh, I would have done this. I'm like really grateful for the path and where I ended up. I also went to Douglas College, which is an all women's college. And so that impacted me in a big way. It's part of Rutgers University. And that's where I got a lot of the leadership experience. So I don't think I would have changed that. The whole process of applying though, I applied to a lot of different schools. And I think at the time I was more concerned about like, what looks better? Like I didn't really want to be in New Jersey, but knew it would be better for me because I wanted to have my teaching certificate in New Jersey. So in my mind, I kept thinking like, oh, it would be better if I went away. Like that would be really cool. Like I cared a lot more about that, like thinking in that way. But I think I'm pretty satisfied with how I did it. So I'd recommend making sure that the choices you're making are really for you and what's in your best interest, and have nothing to do with like the comparison game or how it looks on the outside to other people, because it can be kind of hard. It is a big deal. People are always like, well, where are you going to school? What are you doing? And everyone has a comment or something to say. So there is, I think, a lot of social pressure on that. But my advice is you are going to live your life with you forever. And so, yeah, you might experience a little bit of judgment for now, but that's super short term. So if you can really be in alignment with what feels right for you and what a better choice is for you down the line, I think that makes it so much better for you in the long term.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a really important point, because as I near I'm going to be a senior and nearing the college app process, I know like, especially no one wants to stay in New Jersey. So when someone says that they do, there's always like this constant, like everyone's baffled. They're like, what? You want to stay here? And it's like, you just have to do what's best for you. I know it's really hard for me sometimes to like stay grounded in that, but I'm trying to just, think in a narrow head with what's best for me. But sometimes it's interesting to hear, what people have to say, but then you have to bring it back and say, does this really matter to me? So definitely a good point. And for my last question today, I've heard a lot about different and emerging fields and industries due to, the changing constant world around us. So from your perspective as a teacher, what do you think are some emerging fields of interest that people should possibly look into if they're not really sure what they want to do career-wise?
Yeah, I think things are constantly changing. And I think there are going to be jobs that we had never, and careers that we'd never even thought of. Like that's just going to start, that's going to keep happening. I think there's a lot happening in technology. I think using, we do the design thinking process and global leadership. And I think that's something that we're going to see a lot more and more of. what I can speak more on is I think that more health and wellness fields are going to be really big and really needed. A lot with stress relief, especially after this pandemic. Trauma-informed work is, I think, for me, that's something that I think is really important, especially in the field of education. Mindfulness, really important, learning how to communicate mindfully. So those are the fields that I see is really expanding, but it's also because I know a lot more about those fields. I have more experience in those, but I see those really growing, and that there's just such a need right now for that.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense, especially like you said, because of COVID. And then something that I just thought of is, if someone were to be interested in possibly becoming a teacher, what are some other possible fields in education that you think they should consider? I know we were having a conversation before about how there's so many different things you can do in education. Would you be able to just like maybe name a few?
Yeah, sure. So education is a great field, and starting out, being a teacher is awesome, but there's also paraprofessionals are super wonderful, and I love working with them. They're so helpful, and they're such an important partner school system. There's guidance counselors on our school system that are really important. And then if you're interested in like school psychology and all that, our school psychologists are amazing as well. And then there's things like tutoring. Like sometimes we're just like, oh, just a tutor, but tutoring can, that can become a side job, but that can also be a full-time gig. And in that way, if you are needing to have a schedule that's a little bit more flexible, that's something amazing you can do. Educational consulting. You wouldn't necessarily start off with that, but if you talk for a little while and you're like, I'm really an expert in this part, like there's so many different niches within education. So maybe you're an expert in social emotional learning or in trauma informed stuff, or maybe in your topic, specifically social studies or science. So you could do consulting in those particular areas, executive functioning, right? So that's also an option. Speaking, so doing different types of speaking and professional development for teachers. So there's all different areas. Like for me, I do a lot of mindfulness work. I work with students on mindfulness and stress relief and stress reduction. And then there's also the whole athletic part of that. So if you are a coach and wanting to coach in that, or even piano or different music things. So knowing that there's so many different levels, and there's so many different places that can go. It really depends on what your passion is, and then kind of finding that avenue. So education can open itself up in so many different ways.
Well, that's so great to hear about all the different avenues that there are. And so thank you so much for your time today. I definitely learned a lot, and especially because I'm considering a career in education, it was definitely helpful. So thank you for your time, and I'm sure other people will also find this very helpful.
Oh, thank you so much, Meera. This was so much fun. Thank you for having me today.
Of course. All right. Bye-bye.